The season continues with a run to the playoffs and a trip to the long pond, where tonight we give you a warm welcome from the virtual Pocono Raceway and our live coverage of the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series live from Pocono Raceway right here on MaxSpeedTV. Happy to have you join us once again on another Wednesday night full of action, where alongside Francisco Bacalhau up in the virtual booth, my name is Kenneth Bueno. And Francisco, things are going to get crazy from here on out. We've had a handful of great races in this series. We have now crept in towards playoff territory. We had our Dash for Cash qualifier last week, but we are bringing it back to a track where usually isn't conventional a lot of the other ovals, and probably one of the toughest on the circuit.
Thanks for having me up here, Kenneth. It's my first time on MaxSpeedTV, so I appreciate being able to cover this racing series with you alongside here this evening. And I'm just looking forward for a great race. You mentioned we're close to the playoffs, so I'm interested to see how some of these guys approach this race, considering that there's a lot on the line for that playoff battle. And I'm interested to see how it unfolds here tonight at the Pocono Raceway, which is a triangle.
And you mentioned a triangle. We'll take a better look at just how things are here from overhead at our Pocono Raceway. This is our virtual view courtesy of Google Earth for the images. Take a look into Pennsylvania. You'll find right there the Pocono Raceway, 2.5 miles, 3 turns, not 4, with right there turn 1, that left-hander there that sweeps over into the tunnel turn 2, and then turn 3, or otherwise known as what turn 4, down there at the end of the circuit to the front straightaway. That is what we have here at Pocono Raceway, one of the wildest tracks and one of the more different tracks that we usually see on this service and in the NASCAR Cup Series. As you see, the drivers have rolled off the grid. We'll give it to you just in a moment, and on the pole it will be current points leader Kyle Benson in the 4 machine will roll off from the first spot, with James Holtzer in the second spot in this first row.
Looking back in the second row, we have the 22 of Jake Roll, and alongside him we have Brian M. Smith in the 19.
Behind them, you'll find Jonathan Warren in the 78 alongside Scott Healy in the 64, which will round out the 6th spot. We'll run through the grid here further as we are going to get green. Craig Launsarger, Tristan Bailey in your row number 4, followed by the completion of the top 10 with Justin Mons and Tyler Murray in the 8 machine. Nicholas Vizzuti, Ricky Rosner to file out through 12. Travis Browder, Dustin Webb in the 73. In your 7th row, 8th row will consist of Roman Long, Chuck Munier in the 44. Alongside them, Pete Bruni, Christopher Bishop there behind them, followed by Austin Reedy and Jovi Sakiped, who's in his first race and did not set time along with Reedy. Back on here, Tyler Warner in 21st with Brandon Gillis in 22nd. Behind them to complete the field is Cody Ivey in the 81 machine. So we're ready to get things started. Of course, a little bit of a later start compared to what we're used to. Usually have a lot of time for pre-race, but we're about to go things at least right at the start, right with the action, right in front of you to begin us right here on MaxSpeedTV. Happy that you're with us on our Wednesday night. Kyle Benson and the 88 of James Holtzer will lead us to the green flag. Ford Mustang, Chevrolet Camaro, pace car to the entrance of pit road, and we are green flag racing from Pocono.
And a great start there from third. They're going to be side by side from the lead. There's your third place starter already to the inside of your race leader as they barrel down towards turn 1. Who's going to prevail as they work their way down in the banking?
That's Jake Royale coming back in this series after a long absence and trying to catch a victory at Chicagoland a few weeks back, but ultimately had to leave in the middle of the race for some personal issues. But now he is up front at the field. We have one car near the rear. That was Ricky Rosner in the 43 around. And I think he also collected another driver as well. You see them there. That's the 14 of Roman Long and the 43 of Ricky Rosner involved in our first incident on the first lap, just off of the first turn. Brings out our first caution flag of the evening.
We'll get a look at what happened there in just a second, but that gave me some flashbacks to the last Pocono race we covered that resulted in a lap 1 incident. But here we see the 43 on the outside. He's going to tag the wall, and then Joe just comes down to the 14. Just an innocent bystander there for the driver of the 14.
See it there coming off of turn 1. This is not necessarily an easy quarter to get off. The wall does come up fairly quick, and you'll see it there as they come to the exit of turn number 1. You see that the 43 just way up high the racetrack, even on the entrance of the corner. The field spreading out. Here's a look overhead from the 43, the John Deere Ford Mustang. That's the car that you're looking at here. Coming off of the corner, right about here, tags the wall, then just goes straight down to get it off, and unfortunately collects Roman Long. You see the 11 machine of Austin Reedy had a rough time getting around as well. He had a hit to the inside wall to try and avoid this situation here. You'll take a look with him. Take a look to the cockpit right there. Almost hitting Rosner, but then having the expense of the inside wall to him. But early calamity here to start things going off, Francisco.
Yeah, and I think the 14 actually might be fine. Besides that right rear contact that he made that allowed him to spin it, looks like he did a 720 and was able to keep it going in the right direction without hitting anything else. So a little bit of right rear damage might be a couple seconds of optional, but nonetheless, he's still got a car in one piece and could very well still be able to make up some spots for the rest of this race.
So under our first caution of the evening, as you see the cars already coming through, so not much to at least note on here, Francisco, for a good portion of this event, since we haven't even completed one lap. Now we've completed one lap, but it's under the yellow flag. But Francisco, I know this is the first time you joined us in this series, so there has been a lot that has already gone on. We're already about halfway through our regular season, and we are here in the 11th race to the 18 race regular season, so we're inching closer to the playoffs. There's a handful of drivers that we've been watching over the course of this season, including Kyle Benson. You see drivers like James Holtzer, who had a couple wins to his credit this year at Texas and Auto Club. Some drivers also like Craig Launsager, who picked up the win at Iowa. Nicholas Vizuzzi, who's won on the short tracks this year. And a handful of drivers also that have still made their presence known in this series. But from your experience here at Pocono, it's not an easy track. I know you're one of the drivers who has put a good amount of laps on the legacy version of this venue, but from your experience with these cars, how tough is it to really maneuver this 3-turn venue?
So I've given both types of the Pocono raceways a good amount of laps. I've ran the Legacy Pocono. I did a race that you covered in CRL just about 2 weeks ago, and I've also ran a lot of laps in this version. The main thing about this racetrack is you have to get to the bottom, and you really have to nail the corner. In turn one, you don't want to get all the way to the yellow line. You want to be a couple inches off of it and really roll the bottom because of how that wall in turn one comes out to you on the exit. The lower you can stay on the exit, you'll actually have a better exit. You want to taper out normally, but because turn one is so different than any other racetrack, you have to stay lower and discipline yourself to do that. Turn two is just Indianapolis. But it feels difficult at this racetrack because every other corner is different. But in reality, you just have to drive it like you would Indianapolis. You see as they come right here, you want to get right on that yellow line. Sometimes even clip it, that little flat part of the apron. Sometimes you want to clip it because it will help you turn, but not too much. It'll really spin the car out. Then you can really let the car unwind on this little short chute down into turn three, where you can really back the car up and try and get a good run through the exit, which that corner is molded after Milwaukee Mile up in Milwaukee. So all 3 different corners at this racetrack, they're each incredibly difficult and require their own challenges on how to navigate around this racetrack. And it doesn't matter if you're on the legacy side or if you're on this more modern side of the Pocono Raceway, it still is challenging.
And it also comes, Francisco, with some of the low banking that you get here at Pocono. You don't necessarily have a lot of banking to help you in the turns, apart from probably turn one. That's where you have the highest amount of banking in this entire racetrack. But you have relatively flat corners in turns two, and the flattest of them all in turn three. So it is definitely not easy to go around this track, especially on the longer runs when things kick in. You were just looking at your current points leader, Kyle Benson in the 4 machine, driving that Ford Mustang. He has been Mr. Consistency this entire season long, and even most recently took over the point lead from Tyler Warner and has been able to hold it on and kind of push himself away from Warner in terms of opening the gap, and he has done a well job of doing so in the past couple of races so far, the past couple of weeks, and he is still looking to grab not only the point lead by a further margin, but also grab his first win. He really has been having top threes throughout this entire season in 2021, but he has yet to capture a win. So he's still looking for that elusive victory, still hoping that it comes at a track like Pocono, or maybe even sooner throughout. But up front, it is Jake Royale sporting a rather interesting paint scheme, I'd say, Francisco. I think we both know the reference here for EDP 445, and Jonathan Warren, who has made a handful of starts so far this year, but now recently in this series. So good to see him back on after his performance at Michigan not too long ago. And he's going to be the one that'll be on the inside of row number 1. So an interesting start here, Francisco. Do you think the outside might be the preferred line going into turn 1, or do you think that maybe that inside line, if Warren, if he can handle this restart, could be in good position?
I think whoever's the leader is going to be in the best spot, because leader has control of the restart, I assume, here on out from the rest of the race, now that we're not at the race start. So therefore, it's up to everybody else to really judge off when the leader decides to launch, and it's very difficult to do so because you have to just wait on them. You can't go before them because then you'll get a penalty yourself. But the best possible job you can do to time it, you'll most likely stay side by side. Very rarely will you time it just right and get by them. So it's going to come down to either the push or the launch of the leader. And as the pace car gets ready to turn left off turn 3, the leader goes very early. You see, and they're going, and it's just very hard to judge.
Back to green flag racing. Woel with a fantastic start up ahead, a couple of car lengths above the rest of the field. But you see Brian Smith in the 19 machine. He has also looked to second, having that push from behind from, I believe, one of the cars in the 64 of Scott Healy in that TikTok machine, who's also trying to get ahead up off of turn 1. Benson way up the track will allow for James Holtzer to make a move down low. But for the top 3, they've cleared themselves, and everybody's single file through turn 2.
Yeah, with this high downforce package that we have here, you see everybody single file, one pulling out a line there to try and make a pass into the tunnel turn, which will really cost you a good amount of time at this racetrack. But you want to be single file with this high downforce package. There's so much draft available on the straightaways that if you're side by side, you're not gaining anything and you're losing so much. And you see here a little bit of battle down in the latter portion of the field. We have a custom 18 Snickers machine and a number 8. It actually just scrapes the wall there, almost a little bit of contact with a couple cars on the inside.
That's the 8 of Tyler Murray, one of the drivers who's part of the race council and the league owner himself, now riding within the 10th position. He was in a fight with Travis Browder, but did lose it to the inside, so now this has allowed the 75 of Nicholas Vizzuti to start crawling in and maybe peeking his nose as well. Vizzuti and Murray running new paint schemes along with Travis Browder. You see Ford colors on the 75, usually seeing a more colorful paint scheme out of his machine, and Murray with HP and Best Buy on his race car. First time we see that all season long. So a lot of these drivers, Francisco, still looking for at least some of their first wins. Maybe not Vizzuti in his case, but for Murray, it has been a pursuit for a race win this season. Here's James Holtzer really putting the bumper to the 41 of Justin Mons, and Mons, a driver who dominated along with the race winner last weekend, and being able to really master Michigan over the rest of the field. And for that 41, a second place finish was good enough, but a win probably will make things better as he's under pressure from the 18.
Yeah, the best medicine for all things racing is getting a win, and it's never easy. So if you're able to find a way to win, no matter how it comes, you hope to do so. Right now, running, I believe, just outside, if not inside the top 10, excuse me. So he's running in a decent enough spot right now. Luckily, it's lap 7 of 70, so he still has a good ways to go before the end of this race, so he can figure out what he has to do to try and get up even higher to give himself a chance to win by the end of the race. We see James Holtzer actually going to the inside of that 18. They're going to stay side by side off the corner, and it's just very tough. The turn 2 is one of the most difficult racetracks to go side by side into. You just lose so much time, and it's just very difficult to hold it on the inside of someone there. And on the outside, on the other hand, it's very easy to get into the marbles and wash up and get the wall on the exit.
You see him still in that fight with Browder, so they continue to remain aggressive. Browder not electing to go to the inside just yet. He'll stick it for turn 1 and maybe try and make a move from there, hit the reset button. But meanwhile, gap has extended to about 1.5 seconds between Jake Roel in the 22 and the 19 of Brian Smith. Two of these drivers returning to the series. I believe we have seen Brian Smith before in this series in 2021, and Jake Roel making a handful of starts to open the season, but had a short absence, and now good to see him back, turning some laps, and even then leading this race so far. Kyle Benson has been lodging in for third, still trying to catch up for that second spot. Meanwhile, Scott Healy in the 64 has been eyeing down that 78, now going to make a move to the inside in his Chevrolet Camaro. And Tristan Bailey in the 86. And Francisco, I know you weren't a part of the broadcast last week at Michigan, but Bailey was one of those drivers to nail the strategy near the end of that race. He was able to capture a top 10 out of it all, and one of the best finishes that he's had this entire season. So already making good note of it on the momentum side. He's currently riding P6.
Yeah, strong run early for him, and most of the top 6 has actually pulled away. They're about a second and a half ahead of this next group right behind them. So the top 6 drivers, generally speaking, have pulled themselves away. The leader about 1.8 seconds in front of the driver in second place. So a good field spread is starting to begin taking place here as the laps continue to tick down, and you start getting more tire wear, and you're eventually going to start settling into the long run, and it's going to come down to tire saving and who can manage that the best with the track conditions. So as the long run goes, it'll be more separation as the dirty air will start to kick in more and more. So getting track position is going to matter, especially as this race continues.
And this is probably not what you want to see here if you're a driver, Francisco. Damage to the front nose of the 13 of Craig Launsarger, especially at a track so long and a track that really relies itself on straight line speed as opposed to cornering speed. That 13 already with some damage to open this race. definitely not a good sight. The good news for him, however, is that he's been able to hold off position. He held off the 11 of Austin Reedy just not too long ago out of turn 3, so he isn't necessarily done for dust just yet. He's been still relatively fast. The 13 of Ron was the Iowa winner a couple weeks back, and one of the drivers who's been fairly well on the short tracks, has put up some decent positions and finishes here in this series, and currently riding within the top 5 in points. So at least Francisco, I know we've been talking about the halfway mark of the playoffs and just how it is in the regular season. You still have that eye on catching that win, and there's some drivers with different strategies. Some elect to, go for the win early, go for the win every single race, or there's some drivers who try to take a more conservative approach. If they're able to get a win, or if they have consistent finishes that put them well in points, they decide to kind of ride things through, ride it like a wave, if you will, and just kind of take things calmly to sail into the playoffs, then start to put the pressure out of nowhere. So as a driver, that definitely could come into your head, especially when you inch down to the playoffs, and even then if you're a driver that doesn't have a win yet.
Yeah, I think as a driver, what most people will do, and it'll vary based on the individual person itself, but what they'll do is they'll assess the point situation entering the race. They'll look at the racetrack and judge their previous experiences at that racetrack before beginning to assume what sort of goal they want to set themselves for the race. Because sometimes maybe you don't think that you're going to be competitive for the win. Sometimes you surprise yourself in those instances, but it'll always come down to race day, and when that does arrive, you start making a game plan as you go along. Do you want to drive it hard and try to go for the win? Do you want to be conservative and maybe run back into the top 10, knowing you're in a good enough spot, and what you just want is some solid points to keep yourself there? It really just comes down to what your agenda is when you approach the race and you look at the racetrack, because maybe one racetrack you don't feel so confident, but maybe the week afterwards you feel a lot more confident and you're willing to be more aggressive at that racetrack. So it really comes down to how a driver feels at a certain racetrack based on where they are in points. And that's just the name of the game for most of the season. And then you have other guys that just feel like they can go for the win every single week, and they show that they're capable of doing so.
There's Justin Mons. You're riding on board with him for a while as he's trying to fend off Jovi Sagiped in the number 5 machine. And he's also a driver new to this series, driving that Freightliner Kyle Larson Hendrick Motorsports machine paint scheme, so not necessarily, at least out of the question just yet. Even further behind, Francisco, your favorite driver with a new scheme here, at least coming to NASCAR, the Peanut Brownie scheme, a purple scheme for Snickers there on the 18 for Joe Gibbs Racing. Kyle Busch, I believe, going to run it this weekend at Martinsville Speedway. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but Kyle Busch rocking those colorful paint schemes, and Travis Browder, also another driver returning to the series as well, and hopefully putting up some good spots as Kyle Benson continues to run down second place.
Yeah, I gotta buy me some Snickers whenever I go to the gas station again. I want to try those. They look good. I hope they are good. But speaking of the race, we actually have a tightening battle for the lead. The 19 and Kyle Benson, they're working together to actually chase down your leader, Jake Roll. So maybe Jake used up his tires a little bit trying to pull away, and now this is these two conserving their tires a little bit better despite being in the dirty air, but it is allowing them to start closing the gap. They're going to get ever so more in that draft, and on the straightaways, it's really going to help them pull in. Like right now, they've worked their way onto the front straightaway to complete lap 13, and they're just going to pull. They're easily going to gain about a 10th just on the front straightaway alone.
And even then, both of those drivers, in Smith and Benson, last time around, they were 2/10 faster working together than the race leader all by himself, as Roel set a 54.844. So tell it to these two was, Roel actually smacks the wall a little bit. I think the second place and third place cars also might have done it as well, but Roel will start to feel the pressure here very soon, and you gotta wonder, Francisco, if he'll start to brace for impact or if he'll try to fend off the best he can and try to be courageous here. But even then, when the tires start to wear out here at Pocono, it does not treat you very easily on this stock cars.
It's very easy to wear that right rear, and most of the wear will come in turn 1. The banking, you have the most banking there, but it'll just go, and you see right there, he's kind of washing up the racetrack. The right rear slides a little bit. This lap, he's gained over half a second on your race leader, and now he's trying to chase him down. You see he's pulling. I'm not sure if he'll be able to get down to turn 1 in time, but you see trying to peek to the inside. Maybe we'll just wait and try and make a move into turns 2 or 3 later this lap, or actually just go to the inside right now because that 445 can't hold the bottom.
He cannot. He's washing up the track. Luckily not able to strike the outside wall this time, but for Brian Smith, this is his exit now out of turn 1, and he will be your new race leader. But watch Kyle Benson now look to the inside. He's going to go for second, maybe even more if he can catch it. All 3 of the top 3 all together out of the tunnel turn, maybe very tight between the front of that Ford Mustang and the rear end of the 445, or the 22 at least shown on the telemetry. Kyle Benson still trying to get around Jake Roell for that second spot and hopefully not allow Brian Smith to get away with this race seed. But there is another battle, though, brewing for the 5th spot. Jonathan Warren has been under pressure from the 86 of Tristan Bailey. They've let Scott Healy in the 64 walk away just a bit, but these two have been fairly close, and I think, Francisco, they've also separated themselves well from the rest of this field. So as the long run starts to kick in, these drivers will start to string out even more.
Yeah, if I were me, I'd want to be one of those two guys. I don't want to be in this battle for the lead. I feel I would definitely not handle the pressure. Having not had much experience on the iRacing service, I'll rather be in a calmer situation like them, having a solid run right now in 5th and 6th, and just staying in the wings, just trying to run these laps out and wait until the end of the race. I feel like that it would be my approach. As we actually see, look how sideways Jake Roell got off turn number 2. I wonder how he hung on to that car. But that's just a product of the tires going away, having pushed it so early in that run to try and build that lead. He was almost going about 2 seconds, and now you see the rest of these drivers are starting to catch up, and he's going to have a big battle for 3rd and maybe 4th as the TikTok machine begins to close in on this one.
Yeah, TikTok on the clock for Scott Healy. He's running them down in 2nd and 3rd as Brian Smith right now is walking away with the race lead. That's definitely not what you want to see if you're any of these 3 or maybe these 2 that are battling for position. But Francisco, Pocono Raceway, we look at this track, we see it in real life. We've seen how the NASCAR Cup Series, Xfinity Series, the Truck Series have worked around this racetrack, and this venue is certainly very traditionalized on long green flag runs. You don't necessarily see wreck fests or caution fests at tracks like Pocono because this track is so difficult, this track is so unconventional that you have a lot of green flag racing and you have a lot of drivers seemingly spreading out on longer runs. And this is probably going to be a conversation we'll walk into. Strategy. It's a 70-lap race here at Pocono, so these drivers cannot make it all the way on their fuel tank, so they at least have to pit once before this thing is all said and done, and that could open up the strategy books, maybe make things interesting for drivers who are not necessarily doing so well trackside, but could do so well down pit road.
Yeah, we have a 75% fuel fill here for this afternoon, and what that means that basically most of these drivers will be able to go 25 to 30 laps on their fuel run, I believe. So it's going to be 2 stops at the bare minimum that these guys will have to make. So if this race does go green, they will have to stop 2 times for fuel and tires. So the first stops with that first caution could come around if this goes green, potentially around, I'd say, lap 28, 29. We start seeing some guys come down pit road. You can really save a lot of fuel here. But you mentioned it, Kenneth, that this racetrack does produce a lot of green flag racing, and we've seen it historically in real life and in iRacing. It's just very difficult to stay bunched up here. The dirty air with this new package, and on top of that, this is particularly a driver's racetrack because of the way it's so technical. There's a lot of straightaway here, but the corners, you can easily lose a lot of time in them, and that's why you see people running them these races as a road course, and you try to short pit, use it as a caution. Like if a caution were to come out, you pit and you already have the tires and you can stay out and take the lead. That's a road course strategy, and we see that happen in the real life version where you have the stage caution. And here we don't know if that's going to happen, but if you're the first to come down pit road, you might see people flock down pit road just so they don't have that sort of advantage on their side.
There's a fair comparison we can make between the lengths of tracks usually that are shown on the NASCAR circuit and then comparing it to this track itself. Last week, we were at Michigan International Speedway. That track is 2 miles long. We also visited Auto Club, it's also 2 miles long as well. They're mostly sister tracks, if you can call them both that. Then Talladega, 2.66 miles. Then Daytona International Speedway, 2.5 miles. One big difference between the length of those tracks and how those tracks handle versus this length of this track and how this track handles. You have more corners, first of all, or at least you have more corners on their side. You have less corners here, but the corners are so spread out in different places that they are different each and every time throughout, comparative to you're probably taking the pair of corners and then the straightaways in most of the other tracks. But most of the time in Michigan Auto Club, you're probably leaning off the throttle a little bit during long runs, but during fresh tires, you're going to be pretty much flat out throughout the entire circuit. And Daytona and Talladega, no-brainer, are full-fledged, flat-to-the-floor tracks in which you can pretty much hold the throttle down, and any blip of the throttle probably will be detrimental to your speed at that venue along with the draft. Here at Pocono, you have to slow down, and we've seen at least they've seen in the past couple years, drivers shifting in real life down to third gear. We can also see here in the Cup Series cars, maybe some drivers are too low on the revs, slowing down, pressing on that brake pedal to either turn 1 or turn 3. They would have to lower the gear, put it into third, have that rev high, and then kind of rev it to the limiter until they can shift to fourth coming out of the corner as they step onto the gas. Here's Austin Riddy in the 11th spot, or at least in the 11th car, in the 9th spot, as we're working his way well up through the field. And we've seen him, Francisco, over the long run. He's probably been the best so far, because he's probably the biggest mover all night.
He's been moving his way up to the field, but we have a battle brewing for the race lead as they work their way towards turn number 3 right now. You see right there, there's your race leader, Brian M. Smith and Scott Healy. They're right on each other. Scott Healy was able to get by everybody else, and right now is right behind your race leader, and he's got a big run off turn number 3. Does he have anywhere to go with it? He has to lift a little bit to stay off the wall. He's going to try and go to the inside on the front straightaway. We're going to have a side-by-side battle for the lead as they work their way to turn 1. Who's going to come out ahead? And I can't help but feel it's going to be Healy as they work their way to turn 1. And yes, Brian M. Smith will concede the spot, and we have a new race leader for the 3rd time this race.
Another new race leader after Jake Royal took over. Brian Smith then took control. And now Scott Healy in the 64 has worked his way up methodically through this field. Is now taking it over for the race lead on lap number 22. Maybe a little more pressure, though, from Smith. It's definitely not over yet, but watch everybody from about third on back. This is Kyle Benson in the 4 machine, almost hitting the outside wall. Jake Rowe is also in this group as well, followed by Tristan Bailey, Jonathan Warren also in this group. I think I saw Tyler Murray a little bit further back as well, but he has pitted about 2 laps ago on lap number 20. So he's one that is extending the strategy, or at least making it early here, Francisco, but a lot of drivers now positioning themselves as a 3-car train for that 3rd spot.
Yeah, he probably pitted early to try and take advantage of tires right now while everybody is spread out, and they still have a couple laps up to pit. Oh my God, he almost got loose there going into turn 1, and he will lose some spots after hitting the wall on corner entry as, oh, look at the forecorner, hit the apron there, but he was able to keep it well off the wall. As you can see, for some of these guys, the track is getting very challenging. We have a relatively high track temperature, up in the triple digits, I believe, so it is very difficult out there trying to handle these race cars, and the wind's changing every second, so it's different every single lap, every single corner.
And you see it right there. We have the weather right on the bottom right of your screen. It was a track temperature of 78 to start this race, and the track temperature is at 96 degrees. So not necessarily triple digits yet, Francisco, but it is very close, and it is pretty much almost at that threshold, which still, nonetheless, makes it hot and slick for these drivers out on this racing venue in the Salmon. Winds to the southwest, fairly at about 5 to 6 miles per hour, but one driver behind. That's James Holtzer in the 88. Brings out our 2nd caution of the evening. Big damage to the rear end of the Chevrolet Camaro. And I'm not sure whether this began with some contact, maybe some help, but the 88 goes around at the exit of turn 3, and we bring the field bunched together once more.
Yeah, what happened? I'm looking at what's going on right now. It happened right off turn number 3. It looks as though he barely tapped the wall, and the car just got away from him, and he tried to hold on to it, and oh my God, he happened to, I'm not sure what happened here. It looked like he had it saved, and then the car just went right towards the wall, and that's what brought out the caution. It looked as though he was going to be okay. You see right there, just barely taps the wall. It looks as though he's got it, and then the car is going right towards the wall. Oh my gosh.
Contact. That's the 41 of Justin Mons that got into him. We'll take a look. This is going into turn 3, right in front, mind you, of the 18 of Travis Browder. Working into turn 3, probably one of the hardest, at least portions of the circuit, where you really have to be hard on the brakes and kind of slow the car down, weave it through this very flat final corner. You see it, and as the tires start to wear off, Francisco, I think we've already mentioned it, the understeer will start to kick in. That's exactly what happened to Holzer. And I think that's why. Tries to bring it back to the surface, and he has the throttle completely planted on his Camaro, which then sends the car into the outside wall. Even more contact from Justin Mons, and from here on, this may be the end of the night for James Holtzer. I believe there's a fast break given, so it probably won't be the end just yet. But for the 2-time winner in this series, this is not good news on lap 25.
And the officials might look at that one. I mean, we saw the cockpit view of that one, so you see no rear bumper. He had that saved. It looks, and then we saw the wheel completely to the right, and you said he was full throttle, so I'm not sure what happened there, and maybe they'll have a look at that one and just verify what happened there. I mean, I'm not gonna assume what happened, but I mean, that's what I saw.
So our second caution comes out after our first one was planted on the first lap of this race, which involved Roman Long and Ricky Rosner. And an update on both of them. Rosner currently sits 18th with his extensive damage, and the 14 Roman Long currently sits 2 spots ahead in the 16th spot with some bare minimum damage. But here comes Francisco, everybody on the lead lap, down pit road for the first time. So I don't think we have a question of whether strategy will kick in, because we have it under our yellow flag. So to bunch everybody together, and it's all about whether you can handle and be as quick off the gas when you get that service down.
Yep, this is going to come down to the pit crew, and usually time variation will depend on where on the box you come in and if you overshoot your box or not. And it looks like the 19 might have done so very slightly. I noticed he had to back up a little bit there, and we'll have to see just which crew can get it done and who's able to exit the best, as the 88 you see there completely missing his pit box with all that damage. And there's your leader spinning the tires aggressively, but he will come out of pit road in the race lead once again.
So Scott Healy with a good pit stop to keep him in the lead. But how about Jonathan Warren and Kyle Benson? 2 great pit stops to set them both second and third, jumping the 2 drivers who were up in the top 3, Brian Smith and Jake Roel. So now they will fall to 4th and 5th respectively, as Benson will step into 3rd, and we will have 2 Ford Mustangs kind of in a sandwich between a Chevrolet and a Toyota in the top 5 when we go back green flag racing. So we're going to bring everybody down to a standstill. We will slow things down, but you won't miss a thing here on MaxSpeedTV. This is coverage of the 4 Wide Racing League Cup Series from the Pocono Raceway. We'll be right back after this.
I am here and now, where stories you pass down are born. I am where drivers become legends, and legends become the new kings. I'm where nothing's impossible. Even a champion rising again in Phoenix. I'm moving forward, and if you really try, you can catch me. I am NASCAR.
Back live from Long Pond, Pennsylvania in the Pocono Raceway for the 11th race of the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series from Pocono. After our first stint of pit stops under our second yellow at about lap 25, Scott Healy has taken over back the race lead, and he will lead us back to it on this restart. Jonathan Warren alongside on the inside in second. Brian Smith, Kyle Benson, Tristan Bailey will be ending your top 5, with Jake Roel, Austin Reedy, Travis Browder, Craig Lautensager, and Jovi Sagiped will be rounding out this top 10 here so far. We've seen some good about along green flag racing, but the yellow did bunch things up, so no strategy calls here. Everybody 4 tires and fuel, and we're ready to get things back going on lap number 28 of 70. Still a long way to go here in this event. We're still looking forward to maybe a potential call in green flag strategy. The only one that we've seen so far has been from the 8 of Tyler Murray, but as of right now, his strategy has not necessarily worked out for him. He pitted along with the rest of the field, so he lands 16th on this restart. At a turn 3, pace car will make its left to the entrance of pit road. The Camaro and the Mustang of Healy and Warren will lead us back to the green flag, back up the gears, and away we go to turn 1.
Good launch by the outside. We see Brian M. Smith get right up to his bumper. He's going to try and stay there so that they can clear themselves before going into turn number 1. That way they can battle each other later on and not have to worry about any current battles. And you see there, they're single filing out for the top couple spots. You see the 88 drift up the racetrack a little bit. Oh, we got one sideways and he saves it.
Jonathan Warren with a fantastic save, able to keep the car straight, but he will lose track position at his expense. 3 wide with Nicholas Vizzuti and the 33 of Tyler Warner for about the 10th position on back. But meanwhile up front, it is spread out just a little bit. Scott Healy is still in control of this race. Seed Kyle Benson, though, was in a dead heat battle with Tristan Bailey and Austin Reedy. They've seemed to find themselves solved on this issue here, and everybody's single file as they head out of turn 3. Healy still with this race lead.
Yeah, immediately after that turn 1 incident, everybody got single file. You see just a couple of cars side by side in the back of the field, but Healy was able to take the lead, and you see Brian M. Smith down in 2nd place, and they've been able to sort this out. And most of this top 5 has been running top 5 for most of the evening to this point. So most of the contenders are very much still there and alive at this point in time.
You're running on board from the rear end of Scott Healy as one car's around. That's Jake Correll in the 445 out of turn 1. And he is around. We'll try to take a look at where he stands. I think he might have already hit the exit button. He's already taken the toe down to pit road. But he brings out our 3rd yellow on lap 29 of 70. We'll try and take a look at where this began. It was out of turn 1. And Francisco, we did see this with Jonathan Warren. We saw it before with Ricky Rosner. Turn 1 seems to be a very treacherous place to exit.
Yeah, the difference was this time it wasn't the wall. He just got loose on the exit of the corner and overcorrected, and then overcorrected once again to keep it off the wall and spun it to the inside. Right there, you see the car's going to catch, keeps it off the wall and just double overcorrects, and down into the inside wall he goes, like Justin Allgaier once did here.
You see him there trying to hold on to the car, keep the gas in, but then just sweeping the car and then just pancakes it on the right side to the inside barrier. And it looked like, Francisco, you probably had it saved. It probably would have looked good from the 22's perspective, knowing that he almost saved that race car. But if that wall wasn't there, probably would have helped things out. He would have escaped with some minimal damage. You see here just trying to save the car, and that's something as a racer, I think, even as sim racers, Francisco, we all want to do, because it is nonetheless a cool thing to do, but it's also just something you want to keep in the throttle so you don't lose as much track position, just trying to keep the throttle in while saving the car. It's best to keep the throttle off, and that's exactly what Royal does here. He doesn't go completely off, but he goes about half throttle here while he's trying to save the race car, but just trying to not lose time, and it ultimately comes at his expense as he hits the inside wall and the field goes by.
And this tends to happen because, like you said, you don't want to lose time. And when you see the car sideways, you think you can save it without having to exit out of the throttle. And you can't really blame a driver for trying to do that because you don't want to lose the time above all. And then on the second chance, you think you could just drive your way out of it. But sometimes you have to think in that split second, I'm not sure this is going to happen. It's still lap 29. Let me just come off the throttle a little bit more than maybe necessary to ensure that I'll have a clean race car in 2 seconds rather than trying to keep it off the inside wall, and in his case, actually hitting it. So unfortunate exit for him in this one, as we see a couple guys faking the pit road entry there, which is typical of Poconos. I actually think Brian Smith actually did go down pit road and a couple takers at the back end of the field. So interesting call here by the 19, and I believe this is going to be a strategy call to try and stretch it to the end of the race, if not go off strategy to these leaders. What do you think about this?
Well, we're about the halfway point, so this is definitely an interesting call, as he's one of the few drivers here in this field to do this. I think he's also in this field, at least some of the drivers. James Holtzer is also down pit road. There's a 78 of Warren. We saw him a little bit earlier as well get loose, get to the rear of the field, but nonetheless, he has a fast Ford Mustang, so we could potentially see something out of him as well. As Smith now hits the gas, he's out of pit road. He's gone past the green cones, now going to catch up to the rest of this field. I think this is pretty much Francisco banking on the fact that this will go green, but I don't think it'll be detrimental in either case. You'll have the lost track position, sure, but if he's able to claw through the field good enough, if there is no caution, he can try and save, use the fact that everybody else is going to go down pit road at least one more time to his advantage, stay out, use the distance, and potentially win this race. But then, if he gets a yellow flag, field will be bunched up, he'll be okay on fuel. He'll spend less time on fuel knowing he'll have more fuel in his tank, so he won't have to put as much when he comes down, and he can also just set himself up well for a run through the field. The only issue will be here is if anything happens in the midsection of the field in the Hornet's Nest, he could potentially be in a big situation where he could get damaged or he can be taken out of this race. We've seen, I think, in our coverage on KBRN, the CRL Cup Series, and I think you saw it. Well, you didn't see it as a driver. You were behind the wheel, but you didn't know that it happened, where Eric Heater got hit by a lap car in the middle of the race, got pretty much taken out. Luckily had the fast pair and came back to win the thing, but it was still just a situation of him just right in the midst of it all, things happen and all of a sudden he can get taken out, and that's exactly what can happen with the 19 here. It's a risk you got to take.
Yeah, it could happen at any time, and it just so happened that I was on pit road when that was going on, and when I saw the caution come out, I had no idea what it was for, and my spotter for the race, Cole Williams, had come on the radio and was telling me that heater had spun, and it shocked me that he had spun. He had been very dominant that race, and it proved so because he used his fast repair and was able to get right back to the lead almost immediately. So, in his case, he was able to recover almost basically without a problem, but I'm not so sure that it's going to be the exact same case here if you run into a similar problem. It looks as though it's a larger field for this race than we had in that race. We have about 20 cars still running right now, and it seems to be a little bit more competitive in terms of the front runners. We've been seeing a lot more of challengers going up there and taking the race lead and really just hang on in there, save tires better. And we've seen a lot of different leaders, and that's proving to be a little bit of on the racing side. You don't know what's going to happen, so it keeps you on the edge of your seat, and we're interesting to see here if that strategy for Smith works out. He's going to restart, I believe, just inside the top 15, so he's not really that far down the order if you think about it. He just has to try and get clear of this traffic while he best can on the restarts while they're all bunched up, and then let the tires do their magic on the long run and work his strategy out, because if you think about it, having a little bit more fuel in these guys, he'll try and go longer and maybe either do a fuel-only stop or right-side tires if this goes green all the way, while the rest of these guys may have to take four.
So we will set things up once again for another restart on lap 33 of 70. So we're already closing in pretty much already at our halfway mark of this event. Lap 35 will significantly be specifically that, a mark of the halfway point. It'll be Scott Healy and a driver we haven't seen in the front row starting on a restart this entire race. Tristan Bailey on the inside. We'll see how he fares. Austin Reedy, Kyle Benson to row number 2. Craig Lonsar, Travis Broder in the 6th spot. And Dustin Webb, Joby Sagiped in 8th. And then the final 2, Tyler Warner, Nicholas Vizzuti to round out this top 10. We are back under green from the virtual Pocono Raceway. Another solid start for your race leader in the 64. But Austin Reedy able to get to the outside of 2nd place Tristan Bailey. They'll be side by side with the field as they head to turn 1.
Leader clear into 1, and the rest of the field trying to work their way through. You see actually a little bit tight there in turn number 1 and up the racetrack. He was able to keep it off the wall, no problem. He was a couple of spots there. Brian Smith has already worked his way into the top 10, so really putting those tires to use, trying to get up through the field. You see him right back there challenging the 8 for position on the inside of turn number 2, and should, in theory, have the better momentum as they come off turn 2.
And he's trying to play that patience game. You see right here in the midst of it all, a 73, 4 wide. For position. James Holtzer taking a big dive, but it won't work. Contact with the 75, and around he goes in turn 3. Caution waves. Cody Ivey gets in it as well. And a big ballsy move by the 88 Holtzer does not work in his favor. As he goes around, some damage to some drivers in front. And Cody Ivey also taking a whip as well. And Holtzer involved in the 2nd incident for him tonight. Well, it's been rough.
It's been a tough night for the 88 of Holtzer tonight. And not the brightest decision. But you cannot blame him in the sense that that's what this package creates. You have to take your runs and go where it takes them. He saw them 3 wide stalled out and thought 4 wide was going to be the best, and just misjudged the entry of the corner and had a very narrow entry, and unfortunately collected a couple other cars. He got the worst of it, but I'm not so sure if that was the best decision on to do that in turn 3.
Here's on board as they come out of turn 2. He notices Dustin Webb fairly slow on the racetrack. I think the approach, Francisco, probably wasn't the worst, considering he has the fresh tires and he was pretty much going to pass the 73 entering turn 3. It was just the entrance that he kind of botched that pretty much made things worse for him and pretty much sent him around and made that contact with the 73. He'll take another look here from our overhead camera. 3 lanes down to turn 3 where Brian Smith and Tyler Murray, they're able to get around and slows up. 75 gets into it. Roman Long almost gets a piece of that as well. And then Cody Ivey, just trying to avoid in the grass, ultimately gets the worst and also gets a piece. So James Holtzer, 2nd incident for him this evening. It has been rough for him whatsoever. But for a good amount of drivers, the call is to go down pit road. So Francisco, now this will split things even further because nobody has looked at this probably at a caution-filled restart. But They were probably expecting some green flag runs here. However, guys like Bailey and guys also like Brian Smith, Nicholas Suzuki, Dustin Webb, a lot of them heading down pit road. There's Smith on the entrance.
Yeah, a lot of guys came down pit road this time to try and get some service. Once again, Smith is down, as you mentioned, and a couple guys stay out, and they will have an even bigger advantage this time. But if they're able to go green more laps, you'll see it more than likely. You see just about a handful of guys stayed out. Maybe the top 8 or 9 cars did, and therefore on this restart they'll have a bit of advantage with the tires. And knock on wood, if they have maybe 1 or 2 cautions, they will not have to pit the rest of this race.
Yeah, it's exactly how that strategy plays in, Francisco, because I think as drivers and even as broadcasters here, you look at this strategy book as a game of prediction, because at the end of the day, you don't know what's going to happen from here on to the rest of this race. You're not sure if you're going to have more yellows. You're not sure if you're going to have none. You're not sure how things are going to fare, so it's going to be very tough ultimately for everybody in this field because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how things are going to fare out. So for guys like Bailey, this strategy probably will work in a way. They will get positioned, much like Brian Smith was doing to carve into the top 10 and did a good job of doing so on fresh tires, but it will be nonetheless a challenge to kind of predict how things are going to go out, and I think that's really what most of the drivers in the top 6 or so, or looking at top 8 rather, to Roman Long that did not decide to pit. So Scott Healy currently in control of this race, Francisco. He's done a well job of doing so, and I think ultimately he was probably the best long run car all race, and these yellows are certainly helping him keep his position.
Yeah, when you have cautions like this and you're the leader, this is just great because you're able to launch and get better restart than everybody else, and on top of that, they wreck behind you, so they take themselves out, and they let you keep the lead. So if this race if this race takes this trend, if we start seeing a lot more cautions, then whoever's in the lead is going to have a lot of favorable track position in the sense that they'll be able to keep it because another caution will come out, and then the cycle will continue until the very end of the race, and that helps them lead laps, and that just puts pressure on everybody else to try and get going and get antsy, and by then he'll be gone because it's such a late restart that they'll have a good enough run, unless we see what we saw at the start of the race where anybody from behind is able to get a good restart and try and challenge for the lead. But we'll have to see what happens. We're just past halfway through this race, and we've had, I believe, 3 cautions, and we have another half left to go.
We certainly do, but here's an interesting call by the leader, Scott Healy. He won't elect the outside this time. He'll look to the bottom side with some help from the 5 of Najobi Saguiped in his first start here in this series. Going to look to give him some assistance going to turn 1, but like we've seen before, it has been pretty much smooth sailing on every single restart for that 64 heading into turn 1. It's mostly the worries about second on back as to whether they can fight for position, but things can definitely change. We head out of turn 2 for the final time before we head to our next restart on lap 37. Of course, Francisco Bacalhau and Kenneth Bueno along with you for the ride, ready to bring it to you all the way to the checkered flag to conclude the 11th race for the 4-wide Racing Cup Series. So pace car will take him into turn 3 and what turn 4 on the wall. Kyle Benson will be to the outside. Current points leader looking again for a solid run and a checkered flag at the end of it all. We'll see how the drivers behind end up in terms of their strategy. Brian Smith currently lodged all the way back in the 10th spot. Pace car makes its left to the entrance of pit road, and another early start for Scott Healy sets us back into the green flag once again here from Pocono.
They're more organized on the outside lane, though, so look for them to have a little bit of momentum going into 1. You see the 18 actually pulled out from behind and now is trying to push that 5 clear, maybe trying to keep them side by side for his own strategy, but we see the 5 is able to clear going into turn number 1 of that 4 car. And the leader, once again, just able to get away and actually look at the 4 with a solid run off the corner. Keeping side by side, we have another one around on the back straight on this back straightaway.
That's Tyler Warner around sideways and hitting the inside wall. Don't think he has too much damage, but that's enough to bring us under a quick yellow lap 37. It was a solo car incident for the Daytona winner to open this season. Tyler Warner sporting a new paint scheme tonight, but certainly probably hasn't been the night he was hoping for here at this track, and he ends up victim to an incident here. You see some damage to the rear end of his machine. We'll take a look, see exactly what happened, but I believe this was, again, just another single car incident out of turn 1. That's where we've seen most of the troubles, Francisco, and I think there was the culprit right there, touching the apron and the car just stepping out.
He did what we saw the 445 do much earlier, except much lower on the racetrack, and he was trying to stay off another driver there, and it's just very hard to try and keep it off the wall and trying not to get loose off turn number one, especially on new tires with the way you have the setups are. On the restarts, it's when the car is at its loosest. It gets very tight on the long runs, but on the restarts, it's so free. It's very easy to kick it out. So for the first 2-3 laps of a run, it's very hard. And considering they were on that long run and now they're just have on new tires consistently, we're seeing this becoming more of a problem. And I know you've heard this a race or two, but cautions do breed cautions.
And that's saying, you say it so many times, but the trueness of it never goes away. I think that's something that really comes with the sayings in racing, is that although you can say it a billion times, it sounds cliche in situations, it always comes true. When you have cautions like this, even quick ones, even if it's one car, we saw it at Martinsville a couple weeks back, it can definitely breed more, especially with the pressure of having to nail restarts over and over again. Luckily for your race leader and Scott Healy, that has not been an issue. The issue just has pretty much just been holding off everybody behind him, which he has already done a solid job of just that. How about Jovi Saguiped in the 5 machine, his first start in this series at Pocono, and he's already walked up to the 2nd position with a chance to potentially take this lead away. I think if we're talking about a debut run for that 5, this is picture perfect for him here in the Long Pond.
You want to know? I want to go on a limb here and say that I think I've raced Jovi Saguiped in officials before. He has been a fast driver. I actually raced him for a couple of wins and top 5s in officials, so it's nice to see him up here. And you said it's his first start, so it's very impressive to see him up here in this 2nd position, having a strong run. Let's see if he's able to keep it up.
So I believe we're going to go about one more time behind the iRacing official pace car, so the lights are still on. So we'll take one more trip around this 2.5-mile triangle, if you will, and head our way to the front straightaway, try to get ourselves back under green. But actually, we will step to pit road. So Scott Healy now, actually, no, we'll fake. A handful of drivers deciding to fake, but a handful of ones still electing to go in. Brian Smith gonna go out as well, but Travis Browder, Kyle Benson, Tyler Murray, Craig Launsarger, Roman Long, Bishop, Ivy, and Tyler Warner all down pit road on a potentially different strategy here to set this one up. So we're still at this point waiting for our green flag to come out, and right now you see some of the drivers edging down pit road. So at least on this strategy, Francisco, do you think anything good can come out of it?
We'll have to see what happens, but definitely, even if this were to go green, this puts them into the window where they can maybe save and make it to the end. Definitely in the best position should it go green, but there's no evidence right now, at least, of it going green the rest of the way based off just the last 10 laps or so. So we'll have to see if these guys are able to keep it clean, and if they do, everybody who just pitted is in the best position. They'll have the best tires and the best chances of making it. It's not a guarantee, but it is the best odds of making it. Everybody else will most likely have to pit, especially these leaders who have stayed out the entire time. They're going to have to pit soon enough. Not really soon, but definitely way before the end of the race compared to some of these guys who have stayed out. And look who's worked his way back into top 5, Brian M. Smith.
One of the drivers on the freshest tires, if not the freshest tires, along with Justin Mons in the top 5. Both of them pitted about 4 laps ago. They pitted on that most recent yellow, and since that other yellow came out with Tyler Warner, has allowed them to gain track position from the others deciding to go down pit road now. And this will probably be a very good opportunity for one of the former race leaders in Brian Smith to take over the race lead once more and keep control of this race. And I think it's going to come down to the wire here, because if you're these guys within the top 2 that have pitted 14 laps ago that are on relatively older tires, are you expecting another yellow to come out? Do you want a quick yellow to come out so you can go down pit road? Or are you expecting maybe a long strategy which could potentially stretch things out and could probably get messy if not done right?
I think the leaders at this point, the top 4 or so, are expecting this to continue to go in the way it has, in the sense of more cautions. They have every reason to believe so in their defense, but eventually the tires will get to them. And I think when they lose the track position, that's when they're going to come down pit road. And it would make sense if that's the case, because why drop the track position if you haven't lost it yet? I think the second they do, if a caution comes out, they're going to come down pit road.
And that also will harm their track position, considering the amount of drivers that have already pitted and are now just about 30 laps shy from the end of this race. So we'll see how long it stretches, but we're down pacing for a good amount of those laps in that 14-lap stint. So the good news for the top two that have yet to pit is that they can either save fuel, and they aren't wearing their tires as much considering they're not at full speed or 100% pressure just yet. We'll get another restart here on lap 41. The telemetry shows at about 28 minutes. If we stay green from here on out to the end of this race, we'll have 2 bow ties to lead us back to the green flag. Scott Healy, who has led the most laps tonight, and newcomer Jovi Saguiped in the 5 machine will round out your first row. We'll see how they fare on the older tires. Pace cars down. Green flag is in the air. And Scott Healy with another magnificent start to set himself apart from second on back. But things will tense up as Jonathan Warren peeks to the inside in turn 1.
A little bit of a run here from the outside lane. You see they're a lot closer together, so it's definitely pushing the driver of the 5 and Jovi Saguiped trying to get up into that second spot. Hits a little bit of a bump there sideways in that 3rd spot now as he's starting to try to hold on into that podium spot. Brian M. Smith, a little moment there for himself, and they're going to be battling for this 3rd spot as they go into the tunnel time.
And now everybody clean through turn 1, so no incidents this time by, but the battle for 3rd continues to heat through. Brian Smith to the inside in the tunnel turn to the 5, not able to get the throttle in just enough, and pretty much letting the top 2 walk away with momentum at this point. Another dive to turn 3 on the fresh tires. He'll probably make it stick, and Brian Smith now moves up to 3rd. James Holtzer again, contact at a turn 3 with Tristan Bailey, and around he goes, and another caution comes out at lap 41, and another similar incident for the driver of the 88. It has not been an easy night in any capacity for James Holtzer, and the 2-time race winner comes in peril and to the rear of the field once more.
Yeah, a bit over optimistic on that one. Tried to go to the inside. He had the width to do so. Like the hole was there. I'm just not sure if it was the best decision. I mean, I know he has the new tires, but given the situation with the 2 cars in front of them, you see he has his left sides on the apron and just slides up, hitting the rumble strips. And fortunately, no one else involved in this, but just another unfortunate circumstance for him. You see, as soon as he hits the curb, it just slides up and hits that 88. A good save by the driver of the 88.
I think here the gap just closed up. You see him going to the inside of Tristan Bailey. He's already there, but then Bailey and the 5 just naturally come back down the track and kind of limit the space that you need to have a car with there on the bottom side. So Holzer decides it's better to go in the rumble strips, but in that curve, it's definitely not easy. You can't really hold the car straight. Spins it around, and everybody else able to get around almost a hit there for Tyler Warner. And I think even more so, another close call for the 81 of Cody Ivey, who had to kind of brace for impact there, and luckily did not get any of the damage that time throughout. So again, James Holtzer gets put to the rear of the field on another spin, this time just solo, and cautions are breeding cautions. We have a look down pit road. Tristan Bailey, Jovi Saguiped also down as well. So him, Bailey, Justin Mons gonna be the next drivers on pit road. Pete Bruni, I think Tyler Warner also in that group as well. Ricky Rosner, Holtzer, and Cody Ivey will go down. So that leaves Scott Healy and Jonathan Warren with 2 of the oldest tires in the top 5. And Francisco, was there a moment down pit road?
Brian M. Smith is gone.
And Brian Smith with heavy damage to the front end. What just happened here with our former race leader? And he is now out. We'll try to take a look at what might have happened here, but
oh my gosh,
significant damage. We'll try to find out where this began. He was actually out even earlier than before. And this is after the caution out of turn 1. We did not see this as it was happening. See Smith is slowing down. This is going into the turn 1 area. And about here, passes the leaders. And just bins it.
I'm not sure what this was about. The caution was already out at this point. And it looks like he had some... I'm not sure. Let's see what happened here. He's going straight, going straight, going straight.
No let off the throttle.
I hate to think this, but maybe a screen issue?
It could have been a mechanical issue. That definitely could have happened, but I mean, this is flat out to the first turn. Kind of similar to how Bubba Wallace and Jimmy Johnson had incidents here in turn 1, but I think at an even grander scale, depending on how hard you hit it. But I don't know. This could have been a technical issue. There have been hardware issues in the past with iRacing. That does happen even if you don't have mechanical issues on track. But this also could have been a situation of maybe getting frustrated with the amount of yellows, but we do not know. But that takes out one of our leading contenders in this race, and arguably the driver we were looking at, Francisco, to be the new leader when things were going to cycle around under green flag with the fresh tires that he had. And now it seems as though his night has gone up in smoke.
Interesting circumstances that happened there. I had no idea that had happened. I was looking down in the pit lane. I was just looking at who was down there, and his car had no front end, and that shocked me, which is when you heard me. And I look at the replay, and I noticed what had happened, and it just shocked me. I'm surprised we didn't see that happen initially. I think we were caught up in trying to see Holtzer's incident that happened just a couple seconds later.
We're looking at the replay, trying to exactly see how what happened with Holzer there, and ultimately just went down in pretty much dramatic fashion for Brian Smith, and he's going to be out of this race, and he is currently logged down in the 19th spot, 2 laps down. Other drivers that did exit include Austin Reedy, unfortunate for him as well, Jake Roel, who had that incident, Chuck Munier, and Brendan Gillis. A lot of them running a good amount of this race before exiting with either incidents or just deciding to exit a little bit early and pulling it behind the garage. But nonetheless, we're ready to bring us a restart on lap 45 of 70, coming to the final 30 laps of this race, or at least 25 laps of this race. Scott Healy, current leader, still with Jonathan Warren, going to be to his outside in row number 1. How about Nicholas Vizuzzi? Haven't talked about him much all night long, but he will be in the 3rd spot on this restart with Travis Browder behind him. Dustin Webb also in this mix. Kyle Benson in the group with Tyler Murray as well. Christopher Bishop, Craig Launsauger, and Roman Long with Justin Mons in that row, going to complete this top 10. So ready to bring things back under green. We'll see if we get a long green flag run to end it all, but we'll still see if yellows come out from here to the rest of this event. Pace car going to make it sharp left to the pit road, and Scott Healy, another early start here from Pocono, and actually not as good of a start. Jonathan Warren fairly even with him to turn 1. They'll be side by side. I think Warren probably had the prediction on him. Healy able to clear to the first corner, but Warren still putting that pressure.
The closest restart we've seen anybody put onto him, but remember, Healy has the oldest tires of anybody on the racetrack right now. He still has yet to pit. He has stayed out in the lead the entire time, as everybody has been coming down with multiple times to have different strategies thinking it would go green, but we've just continued to have cautions, and we see there side by side for that 4th spot as the top 2 have pulled away, and we see that Ford machine comfortably in the 3rd spot, and it looks as if the 18 will try to clear him off 4, but unfortunately unable to, and then will remain side by side going into turn 3.
Browder to the inside of Dustin Webb. Kyle Benson will also look to come in the trail 2-4 position at a B4, P5 on the grid, still side by side between the 2 Mustangs. 1 driver to the outside wall, 2, as a matter of fact, that was Launsauger and Roman Long tagging the outside wall, but no harm, no foul. We stay green. Top 2 have flowed away from the rest of this field. Nicholas Vizuzzi has held strong for 3rd, but even then, Francisco, on the oldest tires of the field, Scott Healy has not felt the pressure all night long.
Yeah, with that big battle that we're having for 3rd on that first lap, it really held up who does have the fresh tires, so it's been working for him, and I guess that's why he hasn't come down pit road. The clean air has done him a service, but eventually he's going to have to, because he has only made that 1 stop in this race around lap 26, I want to guesstimate. So he cannot, even with all these caution laps, cannot make it to the end of the race on fuel. So it's going to be an interesting circumstance to see what happens here. We've completed 2 laps under green now. That's more laps than we completed under green in the last 20.
It's been a wild caution fest throughout the good segment of the halfway point of this race, but for now, everything seems clear and green. And Healy, you got to wonder whether he's on the saving route, whether under all those yellows he's been clutching and coasting, maybe looking to save some of that extra fuel and extend it to the end of this race, or maybe looking for more yellows to save even more fuel and be there at the end. But now, if we stay green, this will become fairly treacherous if Healy does not have enough fuel. Watch this, 3 wide.
3 wide.
For position, that's P3. Vizuzzi under fire from Browder and Benson. Vizuzzi will back out in the tunnel turn in turn 2, and Benson still trying to hold on to gain position away from Travis Browder, and a fantastic pass as they head to turn 3.
Yeah, you do not want to go side by side into the tunnel turn, let alone 3 wide. Someone was going to have to back out of that one, or else there was going to be an incident. Fortunately, we saw him back out of that one, and that results in a net gain of 2 spots for that 18 to get up into the 3rd position onto the podium. as the top two he sees right in front of him. And he has relatively new tires. Can he put it into good use now? And as we were talking about our race leader, the window here we've seen today is close to 30 laps on fuel, and considering the amount of caution laps that we've had, he can probably have saved about 10 laps, but even that is putting him short to making it to the end of the race, best case scenario. I'm sure he's trying as best as he can to close it up, but if this does go green from here on out, he may end up somewhere around 4 laps short.
26 laps led and counting for the 64 of Scott Healy, running that TikTok machine, and has been in control for a good amount of this race, as now Travis Browder and Benson have single filed themselves out and now look to probably claw in the gap between themselves, second place and first place. But there's another battle brewing. Here's the 8 of Tyler Murray. We've talked about him over the course of this season so far, and he has had sort of an up and down season, some good finishes, but some also rough runs throughout the season, either being involved in incidents or just not having the raw pace to keep up with the drivers up front. But Tyler Murray to the inside of the 75, looking for a better run. The new colors on his Chevrolet Camaro, now with very wide exit out of turn 1, and he'll actually head back in line. So for Murray, it's all been about a season to come back. He is still within the top 10 in points, but good finishes and consistency matters everywhere in the racing world.
Yeah, look at who's in the 5th spot. It's James Holzer. After all the problems he's had here today, he is still in the top 5 and very much in this battle for position. And it's incredible to think about the damage that he may have on his race car. I'm not sure how many fast repairs these guys have been allotted in this race. I know he's used at least 1 or 2, but here he is in the top 5 and still in this race. The top 2 far away, and we can see a big stack up from 3rd on back. Just nobody's unable to break free.
Yeah, very big line of cars all the way back to, I believe, Dustin Webb in the 11th spot. So there are a heap of machines working for position. And even then, for James Holtzer, and it's corrected there, Francisco, they have 1 fast repair given to them here in the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series. So once you burn it down, any damage you pick up after, you'll have to spend that time fixing it down pit road. So for Holtzer, I think the damage was so minimal that he already used his fast repair for the damage that was extensive. And even then, a little bit of a crinkle to the rear end, but nonetheless, still able to hold strong and definitely having some pace to good use. It's all about really just staying out of trouble for Holtzer. We've seen him grab wins at tracks 2 miles or larger. We saw him take the win at Auto Club not too long ago. Also picked up a 1.5-mile win at the Texas Motor Speedway in a thrilling dash to the finish after dominating that event and almost being put to the brinks by Brad Herman. And now he's walked into the top 5, but I believe Kyle Benson last time around 4/10 quicker than second place. They're catching up here.
They're catching up, but will they have time? 20 laps to go. 20 laps at Pocono is a long time, but of course you take into consideration the package and just the speed that these guys have shown all night. Our race leader, Healy, is out to a 2-second lead over the second place driver, and they're starting to converge up on that second spot sooner or later. So we'll have to consider the fuel situation on our race leader. It is the worst situation of anybody on the racetrack right now. I think everybody else on the racetrack can make it. They also have better tires, so it's going to be an interesting dilemma once we get down to these closing laps.
So now into the final 20 laps around the Pocono Raceway. Scott Healy has breached 2.3 seconds over second place, but he may have to start looking in his rearview mirror fairly soon because the battle for second will continue to heat on as Benson starts closing in with Browder and Holtzer to hold alongside. Here's Holtzer probably taking a look to the inside for that 4th spot, but not able to get it to the exit of turn 1. We'll at least try it once more to get in through. A lot of drivers here looking for their first win. Travis Browder has picked up a top 3 this season. We haven't seen him in a couple weeks' time, but always good to see him back, and what a performance this would be on his return to this series. A top 4 or maybe even top 3, maybe even more if he can catch it to the end of this race. Benson on his pursuit for his first victory in 2021. Warren and Healy, 2 drivers new to this series, still looking for their first win, and Healy looking for a first win in one of his first starts here in 2021. It continues to get tight throughout. But as we have already been well past over halfway, and we're in the final 18 laps of this race on a long green flag run, it'll be our time to go through the field, and we'll kick things off with our current race leader and arguably the most dominant driver tonight, the TikTok Chevrolet Camaro of Scott Healy. 31 laps led and counting for the driver of the 64. Ever since he's taken the lead, he has not held back. He is on the oldest tires of this field, but even then, he's been able to hang on and pretty much gap everybody in sight, and the competition has been well off the pace from that 64. Over the long run, he's been able to catch up that speed, trying to look for his first win in 2021.
Jonathan Warren in that second spot on a similar strategy as to your race leader, but he has come down to pit road more recently than him, so he is in a fuel situation that is much better than your race leader. He's been running in the top 5 for most of the event. It was helped with those cautions midway through this race, but he has held on to that second spot, showing that speed. He is not gaining that much ground on your race leader, but he is looking to have a solid points event and come away with a P2, and that would be a solid finish for this team.
A lot of check boxes this year for the 4 of Kyle Benson, but the only one that has not been touched has been win a race this season. Kyle Benson, the consistent driver and the current points leader coming into tonight and spreading himself away from Tyler Warner and Craig Launsauger for that point standing position. He has yet to get that win. All these good finishes have been coming to him, and his pretty much approach is to go for the win every single race and keep running the way he has. All the points he's built up, all the consistency he's been able to carry through this season has been bleeding into the regular season and hopefully has a shot to get through the playoffs. Currently rides third, has not been able to run for the race seat just yet, but has shown promising speed over this long run. We'll see if we stay green, whether he can catch up to the rest in the top 2.
In the 4th spot, we have James Holzer, and we've talked about him a lot today, and it hasn't exactly been for a good reason, but now we are. He is running in the 4th spot, trying to take over 3rd, but Kyle Benjamin is right in front of him. Kyle Benjamin, excuse me for that one. Benson is right in front of him, and he hasn't been able to really get up to that car in front of him and make that pass for the 2nd spot. The dirty hair has really been affecting these guys, and they haven't been able to make the moves that they've been intending on trying to make. So it really is costing them, and laps are starting to wind down. So something's going to have to give here in the next couple laps if they want to try and make a run for the lead because time's running out.
Travis Browder completes your top 5 and is one of the drivers returning to this series. Mentioned it just a little bit ago that he's one of the drivers returning after a couple races missed. Edge of top 3 not too long ago, I believe the Chicagoland Speedway, but ever since, did miss a couple races this season and has been a consistent driver throughout, as we had one driver down pit road as we complete the top 5. That is the 78 of Jonathan Warren. So it is given up for the 78 on the strategy, and now he will go down pit road under green flag conditions. But as we continue through this field, top 5, now top 4 for Travis Browder, and continues to try and run down the drivers in 2nd and 3rd, but still not able to get some of that time back.
And looking down in the now 5th position, we have Tristan Bailey, who has been running solidly inside the top 10 for most of the evening in that A-Shock energy drink, 86. We've seen him running up in this sort of position for most of the event. He stayed there. He's still running there, and a top 5 finish would be ideal for this team. And let's just see if he's able to bring it home in one piece.
Daytona winner to open this season, Tyler Warner, now back to the 6th position. We saw him not too long ago hit the inside wall to bring out a caution at the midway point of this race, but a faster pair checked off, and fresh tires to his race car has sent him back up through the field. Certainly the long run speed has helped for the one-time race winner this season. Has been one of the drivers in 2nd in points for most of this entire 2021 period, and he's been trying to get it back over from the point lead from Kyle Benson. Has yet to do so with the way Benson has been performing, but Tyler Warner has a driver to definitely keep your eyes on. A driver who's won once, a driver who could definitely win again, currently sitting 6th.
Looking behind, we have the number 13, the 13 of, that is Craig. I do not want to misspell his last or mispronounce his last name. Forgive me for that. But he is running solidly inside this top 10, and he is doing a good job keeping the car on the racetrack. Has been on the right end of the strategy to be here and still have a clean race car. If this race does go green, he is going to get a top 10 finish, and I'm sure he'll take that.
Drivers sitting behind him include Nicholas Vizzuti, Dustin Webb, Tyler Murray to complete the top 10, and the rest of the field will follow as suit. Justin Mons, Christopher Bishop, Roman Long, Pete Bruni in the 14th spot, Jonathan Warren, who just pitted to complete the top 15, then Ricky Rosner, Cody Ivey, Joby Saguiped, who's back in 18th, 15 laps down, and then everybody else, Brian Smith, Austin Reedy, Jake Royal, Chuck Munier, and Brennan Gillis. Those drivers, starting with Brian Smith, are out of this race, multiple laps down. But as we've now crossed less than 15 to go here from the Pocono Raceway, it is a 2.8 second gap, but mind you, this was way larger a couple of laps ago. Last time it was about 3.1 seconds, and it is starting to close in. James Holtzer, who's picked up 2nd from Travis Browder and Kyle Benson on the fresh tires. You see him there, a little bit of a speck up to the start-finish line, but he is starting to close in. The question will be whether he'll have enough time.
12 laps to go, and remember, 12 laps at Pocono is still a good amount of time. He's gained about half a second in the last lap and a half or so, so he is gaining time, and he will have time on his hands in the sense that he's given the freedom to run him down. He has tires in his advantage, and the fuel situation is his advantage. He doesn't have to worry about fuel or tires. He can go completely full power and try and go catch this race leader. The race leader, on the other hand, has to try and maybe save a little bit of fuel. Unsure if he can go all the way. Remember, he has stayed out since they first pitted. They first pitted on the second caution of the race on lap 27, I believe it was. So he has gone this entire distance having only done one single pit stop. The caution laps have helped him, but with just a couple of laps to go, it's starting to become more clear on whether or not he can make it. But for us, we still have no idea if it's going to be close or not.
A ride inside the driver's seat with the 64, your current race leader, as he just crossed the line for 11 laps to go. At lap 60 here from Pocono Raceway. No significant hints of conservation. Just running it like if it was a long green flag run. No clutching and coasting on his race car so far. We'll take a look to turn 2, see if that engine does come off a little bit with the revs. And going into turn 2, nothing. Just right out the throttle, making sure he can make it throughout every single corner. And he might have saved enough to the end of this race, but that gap continues to close in. But here will be an even bigger thing, Francisco, because there's still 11 laps to go. You say it, 2.5 mile venue. It's still a very long route to get around here from Pocono. However, when you're a guy like James Holtzer, you're cutting in this lead, but at the same time, you're running at 100%. Scott Healy may not be running at that entire length because he has such older tires, and therefore he has to run a lot slower than the competition. But with this gap, this could potentially be harmful for Holtzer in a way, because if he tries, and a caution will be waived with 10 laps to go. And I believe it might have involved Ricky Rosner in the 43 machine, bringing us under our, I believe, 4th yellow of the evening. We'll try to see exactly what might have happened here. You see Rosner down pit road. And I believe there was a spin to the entrance of pit road, a tag on the wall at turn 3. And I believe this was the reason the yellow was called.
Wow.
I'm not exactly sure why, because he was down pit road, but nonetheless, Rosner goes around. There was nobody else around on the racetrack. And Rosner, with this situation, brings us under rest for what could be the final time this evening.
You hate to see that, in the sense that under normal circumstances, that would not be a caution. Unfortunately, we don't have control of everything here. iRacing decided that that was worthy of a caution, and that's why the yellow flag is put out. I believe if it was completely up to admins, they would have probably let this one go. Considering he did end up going down pit road, you see barely clipped the pit road attenuator and was well into pit road. I mean, I don't think he was going to be in danger of anybody. I think whoever would intend on pitting would see him, and they have enough ample room to get by him, considering they'll be at the slow speed of pit road. So unfortunate circumstances for the end of this race that this had happened this way, and that takes away that big gap that our leader had worked out to, and maybe now he's definitely got to pit.
There's the field behind the pace car in turn 2. So now the decision has not been made. If this decision is made to go down pit road, this will be a pivotal moment in this race. But another question will be, Francisco, if anybody else will go down pit road, because they've ran more than about 19 laps on their tires. So you got to think these drivers are also looking to pit along with Scott Healy. So this could come to benefit for your race leader if everybody pits along with him. If he has the fresh tires, they all have the fresh tires. They're back on equal footing. And if Healy can get a good restart, have his raw pace that he's had all night long, this could be very well for him in a race that was looking to be his in the final 10 laps of this race. But what I think, Francisco, the cause of that yellow, I believe he hadn't gone specifically in the pit road begin section yet. I believe that might have been the cause, because of the long stretch that comes from the pit road attenuators all the way to where pit road actually begins for these drivers with the field that we have. So I believe that might have been the reason why iRacing constituted it as a yellow flag. You see the yellow line there that they just crossed. That's, I believe, the official entrance of pit road. That's exactly why Rosner had caused that yellow. But Healy and everybody on the lead lap goes down pit road for what might be the final time tonight.
And Healy messed up on his entry. He overshot his pit box. That's going to cost him time.
And Healy overshoots it just a little bit. Some time will be shaved off. We'll see how things fare out of pit road. Here come a couple drivers near the rear. There's Travis Browder. And James Holtzer will be out of pit road first. Out of all of them, Healy falls through on a slow stop here in the final 8 laps of this race. James Holtzer takes over the race lead. Travis Browder, and guess who? Jonathan Warren, who had pitted not too long ago. We thought it was the over part of this race for him. We thought it was the end, but it has come back to life as Healy now falls to the 11th spot.
I believe Warren took 2 tires, but this is where you have to ask yourself, was that mistake due to the so old of the tires that he had? Remember, he had about 40 plus laps on those tires, so potentially very worn and probably not expecting it to have that little grip when he came into his pit box. Let's see if we can get a look at it coming into his pit box just to see what happened there. I mean, I've had this happen to me, and it's usually the byproduct of having so old tires. You're not expecting it to have as little grip as you do, and when you pull into your box, you're surprised, then you brake more instinctively, yet that's actually making the situation worse. You see him leading the field down into pit road, still in a good enough spot. There's his box right there, and he just goes over almost an entire car length.
Yeah, just tries to hold on the brakes, and that happens sometimes where you're trying to judge where it is, and ultimately you can misjudge where the pit road box actually is for your car, and it can make things a lot worse. And now Healy will be mired back in traffic for pretty much what feels like now the first time this evening, even though he started in the midsection of the field and crawled his way up to first. So we will have a completely different complexion here with 6 laps to go. We'll run down the field for you here. James Holtzer is your current race leader. He'll lead us off into turn 1 for what could be the final time tonight on the outside lane in row number 1, followed by Travis Browder to his inside, then followed by Justin Mons, prominent Michigan driver from last week, and Jonathan Warren back in the mix on the inside of row 2. Christopher Bishop and Tyler Warner will be in row number 3. First time we see Bishop in this top 5 all race long. And then you'll see Craig Launsauger and Kyle Benson to your row number 4. First time we see Benson as far back as 7th tonight. Nicholas Vizzuti to 8th. Or actually ending up the top 5, or top 10 rather, with Dustin Webb and Tyler Murray. Scott Healy in 12th. 13th to Roman Long. 14th to Pete Bruni. Tristan Bailey to 15th. Cody Ivey, Ricky Rosner, and Joby Saguiped will round out at least the drivers from 1st through 18th on the grid that are still on the racetrack. We are ready for what might be a frantic restart to the end of this race. 6 laps to go from Pocono. 2.5 miles around, so a long way to go. But this could come down to the wire as James Holtzer will try to take his 3rd race win this season after missing a good chunk of this league. He'll try to come back with a victory and a checkered flag in hand. Off of turn 3 for what might be the final time this evening. Pace car will look to the left to pit road. It'll be the Camaro of Holzer, the Camry of Travis Browder, leading us to the green flag with 6 laps to go.
A great launch for your leader. He's able to get out there and clear of everybody else. You see them fighting for that 2nd spot, trying to go to the inside. Make sure he can block the inside. Trying to keep that 2nd position. He's going to go down to the inside and try and take over the 2nd spot. We have the 41 way up the high side. He's going to lose a lot of ground up there. That is not going to work for him. But he's actually going to get a big run here. And here comes the 41 to the inside of the 18. They're going to be side by side for 2nd. This is exactly what James Holtzer wants to see in his mirror.
And a big run off turn 1 on the banking sends Justin Mons to 2nd in the tunnel turn. Will he have retaliation from the 18 to Travis Browder? The answer will be no for now. Saw Kyle Benson a little bit squirrely out of the tunnel turn. He'll be under fire from 2nd place point standing competitor in the 33 of Tyler Warner. But coming to 5 laps to go, still side by side for 2nd. James Holtzer now almost a 2nd in front of the field and looking to control the rest of this race.
Holtzer has had so many problems here tonight, and he got a big break with that caution, and now he is leading this race with 5 laps to go, and it's his race to lose at this point. They're side by side for second, and they don't realize that they're losing time and doing this. Very tight for the 41. He's going to try and leave room up. Oh, no, he's actually cleared. It looks like he was able to take over that second spot. A crossover, actually, by the 18. So them racing each other is costing them so much time, and they're allowing the 86 to just get away.
It'll be all smiles looking to the rearview mirror for the 88 of James Holtzer, seeing them two battle for position as they continue to lose time. Now a second from James Holtzer, who will come across the line, take 4 laps to go, and will try to chip these laps off the best way he can. The only thing that'll set things up is if a caution comes out in the final 3 laps. And we could potentially have one right there. Tristan Bailey almost to the outside wall and had a little bit of a moment there. Travis Browder, though, able to catch up to second. And now he will try to reel down your race leader.
He's got 4 laps to do so, but I'm not sure if he's going to have enough time to get up there. It takes a good amount of time to catch someone, let alone make the pass. The 41 has lost a little bit of touch with that 18 for at least the immediate ground, so he's covered for the next set of corners. But Holzer, despite all his troubles, he is out here leading by about 1 second, just probably a little bit under with this draft on the end of the straightaways. But as long as he's able to run some clean laps, he should be in a good enough spot. But don't hand it to him just yet, because as we've seen, it's not over till it's over.
It's not over until we get to the white flag. That will be when, if anything happens on the racetrack in terms of contact or spinning, it will result in no caution, and the field will stay as they run to the start-finish line. And that's all that James Holtzer does not want to see. 3 laps to go from the Pocono Raceway. You see the gap right there to turn 1. It's about less than half a second, or at least 1 second now. Browder still trying to claw in as he's now clear of everybody behind. Here's Benson now looking for third out of turn 1.
Browder close in, but it's a little too late because he's gained about 2/10 in the last lap, but he's going to run out of time. He was busy fighting with the 41. A crossover by the 41 trying to take over that 3rd spot. They're racing very aggressively for the podium spot.
And out of the inside, the 2 Mustangs will go, try to make it not tight out of the tunnel turn. Benson, a little bit of door contact to the 41, but they will stay clean as Browder tries to clear himself away and will try to reel in the final 2 laps to James Holtzer. And it's all about just clicking these laps off. No conservation for the 88 or anybody in this field. 2 laps to go from Pocono.
Not the lap that the 18 needed to have if he wanted to have any chance. He lost time on that lap, so he's going to have to pull everything out of the bag, but even that might not be enough. Just going to run out of time to this 88, and you have to think it came down to that restart, the timing of the restart. That's where he lost most of his initial time and got caught battling with some of those guys behind him. But you have to give James Holtzer credit. He showed speed for most of the night, despite all the troubles that he was finding himself in, all the spins, all the situations that he would find himself in for most of the night. But he decided that it was going to be showtime at the end of the race, and he's closing out, and he's going to come to the white flag and try and win his 3rd race of the year.
Mons and Warren in a battle for the 4th spot, but out of turn 3, James Holtzer in his DeWalt Chevrolet Camaro will see the white flag to look for one more trip around this 2.5-mile triangle. James Holtzer, a 2-time winner this season. I mentioned it earlier in the broadcast, picked up the win at Texas Motor Speedway for his first checkered flag after dominating that race. Then comes to Auto Club, does the same thing in a nice battle between the top 3 competitors, and walked away in a long strategy game to win it all. And now, after being absent from this series for a handful of weeks, James Holtzer is looking to once again capture a win and put himself back into championship conversation. Into the tunnel turn for the final time. It's 1.1 seconds to second place Travis Browder. But down the straightaway to turn 3 for the final time in race number 11 of the 4Wide Racing Cup Series. James Holtzer will pick up his 3rd win of the season and pick up right where he left off. James Holtzer wins it from Pocono.
You see going down all the way to the inside wall in celebratory fashion. Happy about this race win. And I have to tell you, Kenneth, I did not see this coming, especially with all the incidents that he found himself in the middle of this race. Just having a lot of incidents with the spin. And fortunately able to come away with it. You see him there just whip the car around. Gonna do a burnout really early in turn 1, where we saw a lot of his problems come from tonight.
Pick things back up. A lot of the field going by. Travis Browder to second, holding on over Kyle Benson, who comes up with yet again another top 3 finish in what looks to be an extension of the points lead coming out of Pocono, heading to the Monster Mile next week. But James Holtzer, what a story this was. Picking up 2 wins, looked to be the most dominant driver in this entire series, and then all of a sudden starts missing races for another commitment, and now comes back and picks up the win in dominant fashion in the final 8 laps. And Francisco, we looked at a dramatic final 10 laps. It looked like Scott Healy was going to walk away with the win on the oldest tires of the field, but then that late yellow from Ricky Rosner sets things into perspective. A big hit from Tristan Bailey to celebrate. I think Tyler Murray might be having a kiss with the pit road attenuator behind there. But James Holtzer, 3rd win this season, and he'll burn it down on the front straightaway.
Once again, a good win for him. Had a lot of trouble out in this race, but he's able to come out when it mattered most at the very end and pull out the win in the midst of Healy having his troubles, who ended up rallying up to a 6th place finish after that last couple laps.
So he'll burn it down, and as he does so, we'll take a look at your full field rundown, see exactly where each and every driver finished at the end of 70 laps from the Tricky Triangle. James Holtzer, as aforementioned, 3 wins this season, with his 3rd coming tonight from Pocono Raceway. Travis Browder, another decent finish. He'll end up in 2nd tonight, with Kyle Benson, Mr. Consistency and points leader, walking out with the last step of the podium. Justin Mons, coming out of a strong finish at Michigan, will finish in 4th. After it all, Jonathan Warren back to top 5 after competing there, then falling out on a pit strategy and coming back in the game. Scott Healy picked up all the way from 11th to the 6th spot, but what probably feels heartbreaking for him, knowing that he was so close to a race win. Tyler Warner in 7th, Craig Lounsauger to 8th. Tyler Murray will finish the 8 car in the 9th spot, and Dustin Webb, 7 seconds behind your leader, will round out and complete this top 10.
And the rest of your order, we have Tristan Bailey just outside the top 10 in the 11th position. Nicholas Vizzuti in the 12th position, and behind him we see Roman Long, Pete Bruni in 14th, Christopher Bishop, Cody Ivey, Ricky Rosner. I think those are the last of the drivers who finished on the racetrack at the time of the checkered flag. And then we have Jovi Sagaped in the 18th position, 28 laps down, the first of the people who ended up in the garage at the end of the race. Brian Smith, we saw, was a contender in the first half of this race, and then we saw flipping in turn 1 under caution, and then Austin Reddy rounds out the top 20, and I believe we have 3 more drivers to round out your field. We have Jake Roll, who was, I believe, the pole sitter for this race, Chuck Milner, and Brandon Gillis rounding out the field.
So everybody completing at least a handful of laps, and you see Brandon Gillis about 14 laps before going to the garage. But we will have a moment to talk with your race winner, and that will be the number 88 of James Holtzer. His 3rd win this season comes here at the Tricky Triangle. We're sitting here trackside in Victory Lane with the driver of the 88 machine. And James, I think for the most part in this race, with the incidents you had, it looked like you were struggling all night. You had that speed, but it seemed as though those incidents were probably keeping you out of contention. But in this stretch, in the final segment of this race, things turn around dramatically. You keep yourself clean, and in the final 10 laps, you walk away with your 3rd win of the season after being absent for a handful of weeks. First of all, walk us through how you feel about winning tonight.
It feels relieving to come back and have some good speed. We came last week because we just started in park just because we had to have the starts in, be playoff eligible there. But yeah, it was a good race, and I know some people aren't happy, but it's just the nature of racing. I don't know. The 4 and I raced really hard. He said I blocked him to the apron, told me to show up at Dover, and he was going to wreck me. And I only blocked him about a lane down. I mean, I passed him clean on the inside, and it's kind of what you got to do at Dover. You just really have to hold it. And I knew I was faster than P1. I was reeling him in about 2.5, 3 tenths a lap. Wasn't going to be enough time just because I had to come up through the pack there before we got that last caution. And then Scott slid through his box. So that really opened up the door for us, and just got a good restart and got out. So it was really good to get back. And yeah, we did struggle a lot. We had a couple different instances. The one, I was going to go 3 wide, and there was a slower car. I think the 73 was there, and I was so committed to the corner that I literally had no choice but to go in the corner, and we went 4 wide into 3, and it got loose. Nothing around that. And I don't know how nobody hit me there when I spun around there. And then on that long stretch, the first run, I hit the wall early, and I got some arrow push late in that run, and it hit the wall with the right rear, and it just sent me for a wild ride. And I thought I had it saved on the front stretch, and it just swerved me right to the outside wall, and that was the fast repair. But yeah, was definitely an interesting race. And then the third one, I think it was the 86 and I were racing tight, and I don't know if I hit a bump or hit the grass or what, or the rumble strips, but it just kicked me up enough, and that gave us right front damage. So it was definitely an interesting race, that's for sure. But it was nice to finish it off with a P1.
Definitely sure feels good after being off from this season for a handful of weeks and now coming back. I think this probably feels the best that it ever was, knowing that you come back and instantly grab a race victory already. But James, this track I think poses a very big challenge, and you had already picked up wins at other challenging tracks in their own rights, at Texas Motor Speedway earlier this season and at the 2 Mile Track and Auto Club. What stood out about this venue that really made things different in terms of your approach to this race?
Just got to keep the car clean. Last year was a really big caution race, and I don't know, there was a lot of cautions. I think we had 13 or 14 cautions. Just couldn't keep it green, and we were able to do that, and was fantastic to have some green flag racing tonight. But key was just not to charge the corners too hard, but it's almost like a balancing where you have to get enough out of it to get, to have momentum into the corner and through it, but you almost have to, to back it up to save tire at the same time. And I think we had what it took, and we were just the place on the track where we were just a lot faster, I noticed, than everyone else's turn too, and that's just really commitment. I mean, you can go 50-50, you can make it, or you could miss the line by inches and get tight and hit the wall. It's just really kind of got to charge hard into there. But got a good race coming up next week for us with Dover. Always been a really good track for us, and it was awesome this week too to win on our home track, and a little bit of a belated birthday present to win today, since we couldn't bring it home yesterday in the twin ring Motegi race. But yeah, it was a fantastic race, and yeah, I had a good time.
Well, definitely was a wild ride from us up in the booth watching this race. But for you walk away with your third race victory of 2021. But before we let you go, I hopefully to see you at Dover next week. Is there anybody you'd just like to thank, any teams, sponsors, or anybody else you'd just like to give a shout out and love to for this win?
Absolutely. Always thank you to yourself for putting on a fantastic broadcast. Always enjoy going back and watching it, and we all do. So yeah, thanks to you. Thanks to Big John Racing, putting some pretty good cars out there every week, and making some really good runs while we're here. Shout out to Extreme Sim Racing, Dirty Racing Podcast. Yeah, it was a super fun time, and looking forward to, like I said, Dover next week.
Well, looking forward to seeing you back on the racetrack, of course. We appreciate the support, James. And, of course, congratulations on your win from the Tricky Triangle. We'll see you, and we'll be watching at the Monster Round next week. But from here, congratulations.
Thank you, Kenneth.
That is James Holtzer, driver of the 88 machine. And, again, another winner here in the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series. But a driver who comes back to finish second. Had a nice, strong run at Chicagoland and comes back for a second-place finish here at the Pocono Raceway. That is the driver of the 18, Travis Browder, who's caught up trackside with Francisco Bacallao.
Hey, Travis Browder, it's Francisco in the booth, and it was a very Kyle Busch-esque performance for yourself. You started in the middle of the field, and we saw you slowly claw your way back up and ultimately finish in the second spot at the end of the race. What did you think you need to be able to catch Holzer by the end?
Well, we needed a long green flag run. We definitely were a long run car tonight for sure. At the beginning of the run, there to the middle of the run, but I was a little bit loose in 1 and 2. Like I was a little bit off in 1 and 2 pretty much throughout the race. But like as the run went on, we got better as the car came along, and so I felt like we were definitely a top 5 car for sure tonight, for sure around top 5, to say the least.
Yeah, we saw that it was a challenging night. We saw several different leaders at some point in the race. We had a lot of cautions in the middle part. Some comers and goers. We saw a couple guys drop out in the middle of the race, so that definitely put some people in a better spot. What did you think about the strategies that were going on in the middle of the race, and how hard was it to keep up with the cautions and ever-changing strategies at that point in time?
Well, actually, on that last run, we were going to be really, really close on fuel, I think, on that previous green flag run, because I don't think we were going to make it on fuel, but it was definitely tire wear, fuel mileage. With these Cup cars, you just have to save fuel, draft them behind another car and stuff like that and things. But I had a lot of fun. I really did. I haven't been racing here lately in the past couple weeks, but it feels good to be back running this. I think this is Kyle Busch's Cup car that he's running this weekend in Martinsville this weekend. The new paint scheme he's running. I like it. It's a nice paint scheme. It's a nice debut running it for sure.
It's great hearing from you. And of course, before we let you go, any team sponsors or people in particular you want to help thank to putting this P2 effort possible?
Well, yes, P2, Tyler for the league. Congratulations to the podium for me, the winner in the top 3 for sure, and third, and everybody participating, all the fans tuning in on MaxSpeedTV.
Thanks for talking with us, Travis, and we wish you luck when you race again.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
It's Travis Browder, second place finisher here from the Pocono Raceway, and then we'll cap things off with a driver we've been talking about, at least talking and interviewing with for the past handful of weeks. That is the number 4 machine, and the driver of it will be Kyle Benson, once again with another top 3. We'll bring him in trackside. And Kyle, it seems as though I think every other week we're seeing you here in the broadcast booth interviewing you with the top 3. Points leader coming into tonight, still the points leader coming out of this race to Dover. Walk us through your night in its entirety, how things went for you.
Man, you want to go get a drink after this, man? We've been in here for a while. No, man, it was a fun night, I mean, I feel like I had a good chance to win tonight. Definitely a lot of stuff didn't go in my favor tonight, but, just, it sucks, but, you just got to deal with the punches and kind of do what you got to do. I mean, I was surprised, man. I always thought it was going to go caution fest, but it actually went green pretty good, so I was kind of happy with that. I was surprised I was holding up with Smith and Roel all night, man. I was actually kind of proud of myself, so I kind of want to put myself to that kind of level, and if I can produce like that kind of level, man, I'll be happy with third place finish.
And definitely another strong run out, but I talked to James Holtzer about this, and especially what this track really is, since it is a Pocono Raceway, 3-turn course, 2.5 miles, and each track, or at least each turn, is way different from the other. How did things fare in the long run for you, since I know you guys had a little bit of a taste of what those long runs were like? How did that fare behind the wheel in terms of your comfortability?
It felt really good. I mean, I thought I was burning the tires up, but the tires weren't too bad. It was probably at most, 30%. Well, not 30, like 21% after, 30 laps. So it wasn't bad. I thought it was going to be a lot worse because I was driving it pretty good. But, I mean, it felt really nice, honestly, for being with the new tire sets and all that stuff coming out and the new package. I don't know if this new package was implemented tonight, but it felt like it was kind of like old. You can get runs out of corners and you could actually get passes, but it was so hard to pass tonight, especially with it was kind of like Iowa with how people were trying to run that top line, man. It was just, you could get the run and you'd be checked out for about 2/10.
You're definitely able to get the best of most of the drivers here, and you end up with a top 3. But again, Kyle, before we let you go from Dover next week, first of all, your thoughts about that, and really, if you have anybody to thank here, who are those people you got to shout out?
Man, everybody at Big Fast, man. We always have a fun time, talk and do all stupid stuff. I mean, and that's probably about it. Oh, and also, hey James, I'll see you next week, buddy.
Hey Kyle, I want to iterate here real quick. I'll take you up on that crush on the car. I'll take you for some great crush.
Man. All right, man. I got a good restaurant about 2 miles down from my house, so I mean, just let me know and I'll come pick y'all up.
Enjoy your night, Kyle.
All right, man. You too.
Well, we certainly thank you, Kyle. Well, there he goes, already out, and of course a third place finish, rounding out the last step of the podium here from the Pocono Raceway. And what has been another fantastic effort throughout, but it was James Holtzer at the end of it all, Francisco, to take it over and win for the 3rd time this season. We'll bring it back up here in the booth. We'll recap our thoughts. Now we head to, yet again, another insane and abrasive track at Dover International Speedway coming next Wednesday. And after the race we've had at Pocono, it's probably going to be even wilder when we get to Dover and shorten things out.
I mean, you heard it right there at the end of Kyle Benson's interview. He told everybody a message that he has for your race winner Holtzer. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens between these two going forward. Kyle didn't like the move that Holtzer made going for the win, and James said he had to do it to win the race. I mean, you can understand both sides of the argument, but we'll have to see what both drivers do going forward, and hopefully nothing negative comes out about it. But I enjoyed my time up here, and it was a good race, good finish, and I'm just glad to be able to move over next week and see what happens at the Monster Mile.
Well, you heard it next week, Wednesday night, 9:10 p.m. Eastern here on MaxSpeedTV. We will have coverage of the 4-Wide Racing League Cup Series as they head to the Monster Mile in the first time this season. Go to Dover International Speedway. We'll see who gets another short track crown from there next Wednesday. If you want to catch more on MaxSpeedTV, well, we have a lot going for you at a handful of leagues that already are underway, including the Southeast Coast Truck League race that just ended from Charlotte not too long ago. They just capped off their stream, but there's a lot more coming in the week and the weeks forward in 2021 from MaxSpeedTV. But for all of us here and everybody from the 4-Wide Racing League, from Tyler Murray, Nick Vizzuti, Matt Roberts, Roman Long, and Craig Launsarger, the members of the Race Council, making it happen each and every week. And from all of us at MaxSpeedTV and for my colleague in the booth, Francisco Bacalhau, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying good night and so long from the Tricky Triangle. We head to another nickname track, the Monster Mile, in 1 week time.